In 1989, MJ Akbar first released his biography, Nehru, and I was just about finishing university then. I bought it for £12, and that was almost a third of my stipend. I have it, and I need it signed. Well, thank you very much. I would like to talk about 4 specific points about securing the Indian Ocean region and its traditional and non-traditional challenges. Firstly, it is obvious that nothing new happens in the Indian Ocean, at least for the last 1,000 years. New powers established their grip on world markets by expanding their footprint in the Indian Ocean. General He, in 1435, was a Chinese mariner, explorer, diplomat, fleet admiral, and the court eunuch in the Ming dynasty. He was just outside the Maldives almost when the empire fell, Qing Empire fell, and therefore he was outside the Maldives apparently with almost 10,000 troops. And after he left, soon after that, Count Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope. And when he came into the Indian Ocean, the Count had no opposition. Portugal and Europe, therefore, was able to establish colonial rule and also fairly tight control over maritime trade in the Indian Ocean. Almeida established a fort in Malé, primarily, we feel, because of the geographical route where we sit, and also perhaps because of what we have. We are 1,000 miles from north to south, 600 miles from east to west. We occupy the navigable parts of the Indian Ocean. The Maldives is bigger than Saudi Arabia in its economic territorial waters or land. After Vasco da Gama, Captain Mosby in the 1820s came into the Indian Ocean. Captain Mosby, as you would know, Mosby was a captain of the East India Company, Bombay Marine, which later became the Indian Navy. Professor Akbar pointed out that Britain thought India was their successor. Looking from the ocean, it doesn't matter who rules India, but whoever who rules India must be mindful about the Indian Ocean. When Britain was ruling India, they knew that they had to understand the Maldives, understand the ocean. And we now see, again, and traditionally India has always lived with the ocean and with the island states. India has never attempted to occupy the Maldives, never, during the last 1,000 years. But we've engaged in trade, in culture, and we have very close contact, but there's never, in recent history or in the recent 1,000 years, there is no evidence to suggest that India had attempted an occupation of the Indian Ocean in that sense. When Captain Mosby came to the Indian Ocean, our Sultan, Captain Mosby met the Sultan in 1820, and he told the Sultan that he wants to measure the depth of the ocean, the length of the reefs. The Sultan was shocked by this, because for him, the reefs were his first line of defense. It was so treacherous, people just didn't bother coming in here. It was impossible for many people to approach the Maldives, so they left it out. When Captain Mosby came, the Sultan fled because he obviously knew there was trouble to come. But then his son came to the throne, and then Captain Mosby came in, completed the Indian Ocean survey. And the story goes on. In recent times, there's been an amazing rush to land grab. Although land grabs are occurring worldwide, they are common in countries where the protection of human rights is poor. It has a combination of factors, international and domestic drivers. The Maldives, up until the recent presidential election in 2018, was a flourishing land grab paradise. The local drivers to land grab, their intention is autocratic rule, consolidate their power, and line their pockets. Their intention is to find partners that don't ask questions. And the standard practice for those who are grabbing land, the standard prescription is very simple and now very obvious. Change state type to autocracy. Get hold of a government, buy up a parliament, change the laws, be able to find unsolicited or get unsolicited contracts, inflate the price of the contracts to the extent that the business plan fails, give commercial loans, and then, of course, you will not be able to pay it back. When you can't pay it back, they ask for equity, and with equity, you relinquish sovereignty, and therefore, the peace of the Indian Ocean. I am specifically referring to China. The government of Maldives is very, very heavily in debt to Chinese commercial banks, specifically to the Chinese Exim Bank. Bulk of the loans are structured in exactly the manner that I have just mentioned. We don't see this as commercial. We see this as land grab, colonialism, and as human rights. We don't have an issue. We want to see more foreign investments in the Maldives and Chinese investments for that matter. But it must go through transparent tendering processes. It must have a democratic oversight, and we must be able to benefit from these investments. It can't be vanity projects. So during the last few years, without a single shot being fired, China has grabbed more land than the East India Company had ever done. If I were to take this contract to commercial arbitration, it would be the same as someone in Calcutta taking the East India Company to arbitration. This is one issue. In come 2021, we would have to pay a heavy price. There is also a very more sinister affair in the Maldives, which is jihadi movements and radical Islam. During the last 40 years, a very radical version of Islam has been propagated in the Maldives and much of South Asia. That has created a breeding ground for extremist views and jihadi movements. Unfortunately, so many Maldivians went to fight in Syria. They went to fight in Syria because there was a strong network that was built, recruiting people from the Maldives. Day before yesterday, President Ibrahim Mohamed Saleh appointed a commission to look into the disappearances and deaths during the last 5, 6, 7 years. This commission has done its finding, and day before yesterday it came out with its finding and said they were killed by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that we have a network here. In fact, the Al-Qaeda and the ISIS is developing a deep state within the Maldives. They are capturing strategic positions in security forces, in the police, in the military, in the immigration, in the education ministry. And therefore, the deep state is able to influence what we are trying to do. Again, we are very confident that the new government will rise up to this challenge, and we will be able to dismantle the deep state. The Commission of Inquiry into the disappearances and the killings is a start. But of course, then we all go onto their hit lists. And we are in their hit lists. But we must and we have to continue this work. Indian Ocean, the challenge to Indian Ocean is also very primarily from radical Islam. And if Mosul can fall to a bunch of terrorists or a militia, small militia, it can happen anywhere. First, they eat into the system. They position people in strategic positions, posts, and then attack. And then there is no defense. We must be mindful, we must understand what's happening, and we must deal with it. I'm sorry, I'll not take so much time, but I have 2 more points. The other is Indian Ocean fishing. The Indian Ocean tuna stock is becoming unsustainable. This is primarily because of purse seining and industrial fishing. We have fished the Indian Ocean for the last so many thousands of years, and we do it one by one. And we, in fact, catch more fish, as much fish, as others who have given licenses to purse seining. Seychelles and Mauritius has given purse seining licenses to industrial fishing, and they don't fish, and therefore they get very small returns from their resources, while we do it ourselves, and we earn handsomely. On controlling Indian Ocean fishing and coming to an understanding on Indian Ocean fishing is very important. All the islands, we at least have our livelihood primarily based on fishing, not just on tourism. Climate change is having a strong impact on our tourism. We survive as islands because of our reefs, and also tourists come here because of our reefs. Global warming and ocean acidity is killing our reefs. If we can't maintain world temperatures below 1.5 degrees, we will lose our reefs in the next 20 to 30 years. When you see a forest fire, it's obvious the thing is on fire, and you see it. But please go down underwater, have a look. Go skin diving or go diving, have a look at our reefs, and see what's happening to it. When we were younger, it was so far more colorful. We grew up in the sea. We are people of the sea. We come from pirate families, actually. But the news is not all that bad, in my view. I'm an optimist. It is possible to find a coral species that is resilient to high temperatures. We are seeing it. There are many species. I would like this conference to focus on science, on investing in research on finding a resilient coral. A coral that would survive global warming, and therefore a coral that would allow us to be above water. So in short, the tradition and the non-tradition challenges to us are A, land grab, B, Islamic radicalism, climate change, and industrial fishing. Thank you.